What's up, everybody? This is going to be a great live broadcast today. But before we get started, just wanted to say hello. Good morning. It is Thursday morning here in beautiful sunny Southern California, and I'm going to be talking to Kris Crunk, who is in beautiful sunny Nashville, Tennessee. And I asked Kris to help me out with something because a few months ago, Kris and I were talking, some in-depth mixing conversations like we have. And Kris was, at the time, going on about this plugin called Neutron and was interested in it, but not enough to go and get it. And then the last week, I'm mixing a project and a friend of mine said, "Hey, you need this plugin." And he arranged for me to get it. He purchased it for me and we downloaded it. And and then I thought, you know what? This conversation that I had with Kris about Neutron is going to be really beneficial. So I called Kris last week and I said, "Hey, I've got an idea. What I'd like for you to do is show me Neutron." So Kris, in his just going above and beyond fashion, has kind of prepared something this morning that I think is really going to be cool. So without by the way, comments, looking at comments. Good morning, guys. Mark, Stephen, thank you guys for coming. I think you're really going to love this. So first of all, Kris, how you doing, man? You're on.
Hey, how you doing? Doing good.
I'm good. So I was just telling the guys, kind of like the preface of this broadcast, and that is Kris has been mixing for a while, but if you haven't heard Kris's story, I'll kind of briefly tell you real quick, and Kris, you can correct me. But what I want to get to is the Neutron thing. So Kris has been an arranger, musician, and he's been doing big choral pieces where there's big, huge orchestras and pop stuff. I mean, if you haven't heard Kris's work, it's amazing. It really is. But Kris has kind of gone over into kind of like the necessity thing, I guess, of like becoming a mixer. And in that, you've learned a lot about plugins. You told me last night that you what was the word you used? You were kind
I'm a
of
junkie.
a junkie.
I'm a plug-in junkie.
He's a plug-in junkie. And so if I want to know what the cool, if I've got X amount of dollars I want to spend on plugins, Kris is one of the guys that I go to and say, "Hey,
Yeah.
what do I need for this?" So Kris, you were telling me, just to put this in a nutshell, I don't think we have time to go into like an intensive. By the way, Mark and Stephen, can you guys hear us talking? Because Raymel there says he can't hear anything. But I'll keep going just as if people can hear me. So lost my train of thought there. Oh, what I don't want to necessarily do is because this is such a robust plugin that really, from what I'm reading, can actually mix your project. Probably don't want to stay there, but it can do a pretty good job of getting things dialed in. And so what I'd like for you to do, Kris, and just let me kind of reframe this question again.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to know, like, I'm going into battle here. And
Right.
you just handed me a gun, and this gun is Neutron 3. I want you
Right.
to tell me how I can win with this plugin. I want you to show me the little things that you've learned, maybe some of the hidden features, not necessarily everything about it, because I know you could take years to learn everything there is to know about this plugin. So with that being said, tell me how you discovered Neutron and what you first like, how you jumped in the pool with the Neutron.
All right. Well, I don't remember exactly how long ago this was, probably 5, maybe longer than that, years ago. And I had been on my own doing, production, programming, all that stuff. And then I had a call from one of the major companies in town, and I was programming a project for them. And they said, "Oh, you're mixing as well." And I said, "Oh, okay, whatever." I was kind of surprised, but I'm like, "Okay, let's go for it," And it was a big project, full choir solos, a 200 voice choir from Atlanta on this thing. So it was probably not the best project to jump in head first, but in some ways it was. And this was also the same time that Neutron it was like 3 weeks before I mixed this project. And one of the things I like about this is, especially if you're a beginning mixer, it has the assistant, and it's gotten a lot better. I think it's gotten a lot better over the years. But it has the assistant that can get you what they call it. It's not mixing it for you, but it's giving you a preset. So it's listening to your music and it's saying, okay, this is going to get you a good, amazing start, and it's going to do a lot of different things, compression, EQ, saturation. They have some new things that are really cool. Sculptor. I don't even quite know what it does, but it just makes things sound better, which that's cool. And you can use the gate if you need to, and so it has a lot of different tools under the hood. And then the other thing that's kind of cool is they all can talk to one another. And you can even edit another, the kick drum EQ from the snare or from the bass guitar. So, what it did for me was, at that moment when I'm looking at 10 songs, big mix, it needs to be good. I'd already mixed some, so it wasn't my first rodeo, but that assistant helped me get things, if I was stuck on something and I couldn't quite get it to sound like I wanted it to sound, man, I would use that thing. And even if the assistant didn't do it, most of the time, some of their presets kind of did. And, we have, I know how to use these tools, but, those guys have figured out how to combine all of those tools together to do something maybe that I wouldn't think of. And, sometimes you go, man, that sounds great. I'm going to just keep it, or then you might get in there and start tweaking with it. But I think that's one of the benefits of some of this new technology, that if it makes life quicker and easier, I don't care so much about the ego side of all of this. I just want it to sound good, and I just wanted to get it done quick.
Okay.
So that's one of the things that I like about it, is I think that it helps you. One, if you're just mixing, I try to mix really fast when I'm getting my sounds and EQs and settings. I try to get that done within like an hour and a half. I want to get my ears fresh. I want to keep things going. And if I get stuck on something, maybe I'm using SSL or doing something, normal, typical plugin stuff, but then I get stuck on something. Sometimes I'll just grab that Neutron 3, click the assistant, and see what happens. Sometimes it doesn't work, and sometimes it's like, man, that's awesome. I'm gonna maybe use that exactly as is, or I might tweak it a little bit. That kind of thing. So
Okay. Well, cool. Well, let me preface the guys watching here by saying that you and I were doing some screen tests this morning, and your screen was acting a little bit funny in the fact that it wasn't
I don't know
showing the
what's
whole
going
plugin. But now that's said, let me share your screen, and what I'd like
Okay.
for you to do is kind of walk me through. Somebody that's never used Neutron before. I've been experimenting with it too. Tell me what you do to kind of get yourself set up to do a Neutron mix. I mean, I know you can use the plugin on each channel, but but they kind of built this whole package to where there's a master control of some kind that will look at every track and kind of like carve out things. And what Mark Jacoby said was that the masking thing was something that really changed the way he looks at a mix. So walk me through that step. The first step.
Well, I put this together last night. I wish we could hear it, but it's sort of a rock and roll advertising cue that I do a lot of these. And so I just wanted to see, I put the Neutron 3, as you can see at the top on every track. And then what it does is they have a newer feature where I can go to this mix assistant. I can, I'll click on the tracks. I wish they had a button where you could do it all at one time, but you can click on, all the tracks that you have, basically all the way down. And then it tells you to pick a focus. Well, this track didn't have a vocal, because that would probably be my focus. But I did kick and snare last night. So I clicked, kick. As I got these set up, I went over here and I clicked my focus was kick and snare. This is a pretty rocking thing. And so, and then it tells you to listen to your song. So then you play your song all the way through. And then at the end, I'll do a little snippet here so you can see. I don't think it'll mess things up too bad. It doesn't matter if it does anyway. So I'm playing my song, I'm listening, and it's doing its thing, and you left the whole thing. And then you can see this little screen here. And what it does is, now I only let it run for 2 seconds for our purposes here, but when you do the whole song, if you have a vocal, it gives you this little sort of a mixing small EQ, mixing faders here. And so basically how it would typically be is like anything guitars, pianos, strings would be in the musical section. Then you have your drums, your bass, voice, and then whatever you told it to focus on, it split that out as a separate control. Now, last night when I did it, I had a lead guitar somehow get in the bass, like it got in the bass. I was like, that's not right. So I went right. I could go over here, and I went right back, and I go over to the side, and I put my bass. I made it go back into the bass, so then I could have control over it. Now, one of the things, I've never actually. This is a brand new feature. I've never used this in a mix, but one of the things that it did last night that really got my attention was it gain staged everything for me. All of a sudden, this is pretty hot levels track. These things are pretty, decently loud levels. And so when I ran it through that, it pulled everything down, and the volume where it did it is up in the plugin. So it pulled it down over here. You can see on this plugin here, it adjusted it down, 15 dB, it looks like. And so when I move my Pro Tools faders, it still gets louder and softer. So it doesn't negate your fader moves, but it did gain stage everything. And I thought, man, that's pretty, and it did it really quickly. And that's one of the things that was kind of exciting last night about this new feature. I don't really care so much about the balancing side, because I like to, I usually have stuff pretty balanced before as I set my mixes up anyway. But, it definitely might be something that I think about when I get in that gain stage process, just to speed things up. And so that was pretty cool. So like if I'm going to do, let's say, this bass guitar here, looks like the window's working now. This bass guitar here, I didn't do anything on it. It's an amp bass. I kind of already, would just use it to blend in the sound, and you're not going to be able to hear this. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to just let the mix assistant go to town on it. So you have a choice here, the track enhance or balance. Now the balance we already did. That's basically the same exact thing that we just did. It's going to read all your plugins, and they just give that as an option on every Neutron, but I'm not going to fool with that. I'm going to go to track enhance. I know it's a bass guitar, so I'm going to go here. It gives you, different categories of what to, it'll auto detect it, but if you know what it is, just go ahead and click bass. It lets me choose whether it's warm, balanced, up front, low, medium, high intensity. I'm going to pick medium for this. Last night when I was doing my snare, I put up front because I wanted that snare to pop. It's a real rocking thing. So now I'm going to hit next, and then let's play audio, and I'm going to play a little bit and let it do its thing here. It doesn't take very long.
I love that it tells you what it's doing, and you can actually hear it change as it does it.
Oh yeah, you can hear it change as it goes. So I'm going to accept. So okay, here we go. So this sculptor, it basically, on their website, they said it'll bring some shine, or it'll bring warmth, depending on what you're using it for. It's basically, someone explained it online like it's like a bunch of little tiny, in each band almost, compressor EQ doing something, you're doing its thing. So what's really cool, and I hate we can't hear it, but what's really cool is this tone. You can choose how much of this effect, you can see it go away, and as I bring it out, it's kind of like a multi-band compression thing. It's kind of like an exciter thing. It's kind of doing its own thing. And then this little tone wheel right here, I can make it brighter or warmer by just clicking that. And then this is speed, basically just like a typical attack release of the processing.
I actually saw how much it's limiting when you did the tone, and when you pushed it up, it actually brought up the top end.
Yeah,
and then when you brought it down the bottom end.
Right.
And made it warmer. That's pretty cool. And also, I'm looking, it looks like a reflection in the water. The frequency right there around 1K, that's got a lot of, it's kind of compressing it. That's really cool, man.
Yeah, it's a pretty neat thing, and it's one of those tools that I don't necessarily have to understand it. It just sounds good, and if it sounds good, it is good, and I mean, obviously, any of these kind of plugins, and one of the things that I would do when I was like that one project, and that project went really well, so they kept sending me mixes, and some of these were big old orchestra mixes, and some of them were EDM dance, kids things, or really modern worship pop sounding things. So, you know, what I use this when the original Neutron, I would look at what their settings were. Okay, what order are they putting things in? You know, why are they, you know, typically doing this EQ for this instrument and doing, you know, so I tried to study why they were doing what they were doing. And of course, you know, this doesn't take the place of studying your craft. You know, these plugins are cool because they make things quicker. But, you know, the people on this, you know, the guys watching this or the guys on your site, you know, they're doing it the right way. They're learning. You got to still learn your craft. You got to still know, you know, all the guts of it. You know, these don't replace that knowledge, but once you have that knowledge, then these tools are super great because, you know, you kind of know what they're doing, and then you can use it as a starting point as opposed to just letting them do all the work for
Right.
you.
Okay, so that's a good lesson right there. I mean, this is one of the things that fascinates me about the mic and amp simulation technology that we have at our disposal now, where you can buy literally one mic, and then you can choose through really close and even dead on emulations of microphones. And in my opinion, it's not necessarily that you need that to be the end all be all for microphones, but use it if you're a student like me and like yourself, always trying to learn something new. Use that as a way to go, I never thought about putting an SM7 on a snare drum.
Right.
But that's the best sounding mic that I found for this. So the next time I'm in the environment where I can like choose from my knowledge base, now I know what an SM7 kind of sounds like on a snare drum, or an SM7 sounds like on a vocal, as opposed to. And then when you're in this environment, then you can make an honestly educated decision, not just based on what somebody else told you that they would use, but something like that. So in this technology, it's like, okay, why did they use the sculptor before the EQ on the bass guitar? That's pretty cool. And where is it adding brightness and warmness? Where is it taking that away from on the bass guitar? To me, that's gold right there. That's pure gold. Okay, so Kris, what I want you to show me now, and this is selfish, man. Okay, I want to see the feature on Neutron that will allow you to look at the kick and the bass and make them do that inverse thing, that sculpting thing, that what did Mark Jacoby, masking thing.
Yep, I'll show you right now. And
we'll go full screen again.
Yeah, here we go. There. So this is this is the bass that I just put together. And if you see right here, there says masking. And so what I'm going to do is you have to have Neutron on the other track. But what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go find my kick somewhere here. I'm going to go kick 2 because that's really that's the one I like the better anyway. And I'm going to go here and I'm going to play. Okay. Now I mixed this a little bit last night, so there's not a whole lot of problems. You can see where the orange lines come. That's where now I can crank the sensitivity up, and all of a sudden it's going to say, "Oh, you got a lot of problems." But I don't usually do it on that high-end setting. But you can see these little lines, especially this one down here, which makes sense if you're having bass and kick. You know, you're going to have mostly your problems in the low end. So I'm going to, if I wanted to address this spot down here, 50K-ish, what I can do is I can actually switch at the bottom here. I don't know if you see this, but you have the bass and then the kick. Now I'm in the same plugin. I'm on the bass. I didn't move tracks. I'm on the bass track, but I'm going to edit. I'm going to just get like a little shelf here, and I'm going to just pull it back, and you'll see it disappear. Right now, that's a choice you have to make. You know, even if you read what they say, sometimes masking isn't a bad, like if it sounds good and it's not a real big, you don't really, like where that really wasn't hitting it very hard at the beginning, that really wasn't a problem. But sometimes you'll get into big problems, and that's when you have to decide, okay, am I going to cut, is it going to be something I'm going to take out of the kick? Is there enough pop and snap above, is it thick enough to do that? Or maybe, maybe I should have taken it. It probably should, if I was doing this for real, I would probably take it out of the bass more so than the kick, because I want that kick to thump, especially being a rock thing where this is more, the bass is almost more about that pick sound where it's that brighter, right up here where they have that boosted, so I would probably let the kick win there. and I could even tighten my slope up. Hold on one second. You know, I could change things around, and you can even make it dynamic too. If I wanted to make it a dynamic move, let's just say for time's sake that there was I'm going to go back here to the kick. Let's say this was guitar and vocal we're messing with, and let's say that right here at 700 there was a big issue. Every time the vocal comes in, it would slam that frequency. I'd get that masking thing come down. Well, I can go over here, do a dynamic EQ, and then side chain from my vocal, and you know, you get into all that, how you external, internal, all the different things. You can side chain it, and so when the vocal comes in, it'll pull it down. You know, we were going to talk at some point. We need to talk about Track Spacer, because that's a plugin that takes care of a lot of this too. But that's one of the things that I really like about masking. Going back to learning your craft is, you know, when I was doing all of that, when I first dug into Neutron, you know, that taught me where my weaknesses were. It taught me where, man, I constantly am having problems with the kick and the bass. Let's go read and study from these, you know, let's go watch some things, or go learn some things, or go watch Mix Coach and learn how Kevin deals with kick and bass. Or maybe I'm seeing that, man, my guitars are always fighting with my vocals. That's where I'm getting a ton of masking. So then I can go and, you know, read up on, you know, obviously use these tools to help me, but I can also go just figure out how to be better so I don't get those problems. You know, last night I was messing with the masking because I knew we were going to talk about it, and I really didn't find any problems. So that was encouraging to me, you know, years later, to go, okay, you know, I've learned some things over the years, and I didn't really have, you know, I was cutting and boosting at the right spots, and it didn't really cause any problems.
Okay, so since you're on the kick and the bass channel right there, I've seen it before. Is it the side chain that allows it to, like, when the kick comes in at the 50 and there's a masking problem there, that you can look at, and it will compress or dynamically
right
EQ or
It'll
compress
dynamically EQ
Yeah,
that.
show me how that happens.
Let's see.
And maybe you showed me that with the vocal example, but in the real world example, show that to me where you sidechain the kick.
All right, you're gonna have to bear with me here because they've changed all the interface, and I have this is one thing I didn't mess with last night, so I'm not quite sure where everything is. I think it's automatically now, the way that they've. Yeah, okay, so it is an automatic process. That's even cool. I was getting nervous because I didn't see the key anywhere, but when you have the masking set up, wow, that's really cool. Bass amp kick, it automatically, now obviously that's a weird, stupid spot to do it. So let's just pull it down over here where the problem was. And so now, okay, that's even cooler. If you have whatever 2 tracks you're dealing with, the masking issue, it's going to automatically, you turn sidechain on, and it's going to automatically, you know, it's going to automatically do that.
That's really cool.
Do that. Yeah. And so you can see the masking isn't, you know, even at the higher sensitivity, it's, you know, if I crank it way up, it'll show up. But even then, that's not, you know, I wouldn't mess with that a whole lot if I saw that for real. Because, you know, if it starts really cranking down, you have an issue. And I could probably widen it out a little bit here.
That's cool.
And so yeah, I was like I said, I was getting a little nervous because I didn't see the key. I was like, where is this going to come from? But it does it automatic, which that saves time when we get in these issues.
Yeah,
you know.
That's cool.
And
okay,
yeah.
So what I've learned so far is that if I wanted to do a complete total Neutron mix, to put either Neutron, or there's another plugin that you can do called Relay, I think, that if you just like, nope, I'm sold on these plugins for this this signal path for this certain channel. Where do you put it? Do you put it before those plugins or after those plugins?
I would put it before the plugins, because basically and I can show it to you. I'll just pull one up here. Relay, basically, forgive me, I haven't had a chance to organize my new setup very well, plugin wise. Let's see. So Relay, here we go. So it's a plugin that it's a gain plugin. Basically, it's basically trim is basically what it is. But you can also do width And we didn't talk about it, but that's one of the. I think the Neutron has a great widener, stereo widener.
Mhm.
I use that. I've used that, guitars or certain things. You don't go crazy with that stuff, because it can mess up if it has to ever be in mono. It can screw you up. But
Mhm.
so you can mess around with that stuff, and so I can go over here. So this relay, and it should, in theory, I pull this up. We talked about it earlier. So this is the visual mixer, and you can see my panning where I have pan. My my guitars are kind of balanced. I tried to get them as balanced as, right and left. And this is the top is how loud it is. So
Mhm.
you can raise up these as it's playing. You can literally raise them, and that'll be adjust your volume.
And
And
just to be clear, Kris, this is like, let's just say all your faders on Pro Tools was at 0. You can literally
yeah,
mix everything from this one plug-in with panning and
yep,
everything. So it
yep,
takes a mono kick signal and turns it into a stereo signal so that it can control it
right.
from what is the master control
And I
thing
learned that
called?
last night. On my mono tracks last night, like my toms and my hat and some of the guitars were mono. I stuck a mono Neutron on it, and when I went over here, it wouldn't let me change the panning, obviously. So I had to go back and make I did the stereo version on every track. So it did make my mono track stereo, but then I could adjust. Like I put my hats over here. I could put things, and as you see, I didn't get into everything. But you can get, really creative. I don't know personally. I think that, I need to dig into it a little bit more before I'd feel comfortable just going full bore with it. But it's such a cool, I mean, especially if you're a visual person, if you're
Mhm.
visual and obviously we need to use our ears too, but if you're visual, it's really cool to be able to look at the mix in that way, in a little different
Well,
perspective,
I mean, we theorize it, or I do anyway, talking about where the
Mm-hmm.
vocal should sit and
Mm-hmm.
panning things out of the center. Like I taught a class last night, and it was like, "Hey,
Mm-hmm.
keep as much stuff out of the. Look how much stuff is in the center there. I
Right,
mean,
right,
keep as much stuff out of the center as you can, so that you make room for the stuff that
right.
absolutely has to be in the center, like kick, bass, lead vocals, snare, that sort of thing. Those things are pretty
Mm-hmm.
almost non-negotiables as far as the
Right.
center. Everything else can go outside
Move
the
around.
box.
And like one of the things that's cool here, this like I'm on the drive, which is the main guitar sound. I can actually widen it right here.
Wow.
I can make it, mono, or I can widen it. And I was messing around with this last night, and I was going crazy with it, and it sounded killer. And then I went over to Ozone and clicked mono, and the whole mix disappeared. I'm like, okay, I got to dial some of that back because it literally, I got a little crazy. I was having too much fun messing
Yeah.
around with it. But
That's really cool, man. You were going to show me. You were going to show me too a little bit of what you're doing with ozone, and and I know
yeah.
this is pretty much Neutron, but I wanted to see the ozone and how that plays into it. Do they talk to each other, or is this a new version of ozone that I don't have that
Well,
talks to
this
Neutron?
is 9, and where it starts to talk is when I go to this thing here, this total balance control.
Hmm.
And so I've used this ever since Ozone 7 or 8, whenever they came out with it. I'll stick this on the end of all my mixes. And it's not an EQ. It kind of is, but what it's basically is the balance. It's making sure that you're balanced accordingly. And so this is a rocking thing here, and I'm pretty close. The low end's just a smidge high, but I like the way it sounds. So I'm not gonna. I didn't want to lower it, but you even see as the song goes, it kind of settles in, and so I usually, I'll have this on the master bus, and I'll kind of check in as I mix and go, okay, this is pretty good. This is, I'm way off. Okay, I got a lot of work to do. I don't, it basically kind of tells me, yeah, when I feel like I'm done with the mix, and then I look over here and this is right, then I'm like, okay, I know this is going to translate. I know that I'm not doing anything crazy. I'm not going to blow any low end speakers up, or whatever. And then you can adjust it. So like I have it on rock, but you can do like bass heavy, EDM, country. And I believe this comes with, I'm pretty sure this comes with Neutron, this balance control. And one of the things that's really cool is, let's say like last night, my low end was way too loud. And I can either go to the bass EQ and roll some stuff off. This is the Neutron EQ. for the bass track off of that. Or what I ended up doing is I went to Ozone. If I can find it here. Where'd it go? Oh, it's down here. I went to Ozone, and you can see I backed a little bit of, just shoved it down a little bit, and it's helped it get better.
So from within tonal balance control, you can pull up the EQ of anything from Neutron or Ozone, adjust the EQ of it from that one plugin. That's
from
pretty,
that one. Yeah, from that one plugin, and so it's I like it just because, you know, I've had my speakers forever, and I use different monitors and all that good stuff. Now my room's tuned, so it all, you know, it translates pretty well. But I'm, you know, when I send a mix out and I've seen it, you know, when I listen to it, I feel like it's right, and then I check it with that, and that's good. It just gives you a little bit more confidence to know, hey, this is going to translate. You know, this is good. And then, of course, I'll check my metering and things as well. Just
quick question. The Ozone, the tonal balance control, did you have to buy the Ozone package that like the what is it called where you can separate the plugins out, or is that part of Ozone?
I want to say I need to look on their site. I'll pull it up here. I want to say that I thought that the tonal balance control comes with Neutron as well. I might be wrong about that. It might just come with Ozone, but
it looks Ozone-ish and not Neutron-ish.
Yeah, it might only come with the Ozone. But at one point I thought that it came with the Neutron as well, but that might not be the case. I'm just not wanting to let me know here. But regardless, it's worth it just to have the peace of mind to, you know, double check my ears. You know, if I'm mixing 3 songs in a day, you know, that last song, you know, it's nice to know, okay, yeah, I'm good still. My ears are still holding up throughout the day. You know, it just gives me a little peace of mind to go there. There are a couple other things, if you want, I could show from Neutron that I really like about it.
Yeah, let's see it.
Okay. One of the things I like, okay, this is just on a snare, and I haven't done anything, but let me pull up the other snare here, because I used, so when I did the, last night when I did the mix assistant on this, it did the sculptor thing with the snare, and it didn't do the snare preset. It did the all-purpose preset, which was add punch. So there, add polish, add fullness. You know, you can put it on a bus just to add sculpt the sound. So it actually had it on punch. So it just is adding a little punch and bite to the snare. It did this little EQ thing. It already had the dynamic. Now you can see here on this this band here, that was a ring that I did. There was still a ring in the snare that I wanted gone. So I went ahead and I think that's a tip I learned from you 8 years ago or something, how to get rid of the snare rings and all that. So got rid of that. And then this exciter here, I wish they just called it saturator, because that's really what it is. You can multi-band your saturation. So on the snare, I ended up messing around with this and changing it. I clipped it, and so on the low end snare, it's a warm saturation, and I'm not going crazy with it. But then on the higher snare, it's like a tape, and that's a little distortion. So it adds a little, it helps the high end crack kind of cut through even more with just a smidge of distortion on it. You can see here, I'm almost approaching it like a parallel compression a little bit, because I did only 40% of the mix on this high end. So it's not 100% of the distortion. I'm just blending a little tiny bit in just to help it cut through a little bit. And then I also added the transient shaper, which I like their transient shaper. Plugin Alliance has a couple that are really good too, but I like this. You just I pulled up the attack, and I wanted the snare to kind of stick around a little bit, and so I pulled up the sustain a little bit. And then another thing that's really cool is, you know, you can solo just the transient shaper, what it's doing, and you can solo that, or you can turn just that part of it off, like I'm doing there. Same thing with the you know, the sculptor. If I want to hear just, well, I take that back. It doesn't let you do that there, but I guess I think it's the compression. Yes, same thing. If I just want to hear what the compressor's doing, I can solo that. And they've totally changed this compressor on this version, and I really like it because it's just very visually simple. It reminds me a lot of what is I'll tell you here, Fab filter. Yeah, sorry. It reminds me a little bit of that, but here's your threshold.
Oh, wow.
So you can pull it down over, it was cranking down pretty good, but you can still see I'm only kissing it. It's only compressing about 1 to 2 dB here, because the attack's so slow, the release is decently quick ratio. And then the same kind of thing here. I'm using it's kind of a parallel deal. That's what they did. They actually had that setting to where it's only using about 50% of the compression, because the transient shaper in the sculptor is doing a lot of the punch and a lot of the attack. So I don't need to squash it to death to get that, because it's already kind of doing it. So I don't have to, I can go over here to vintage mode, and it operates more like a vintage sounding, compressor would. And you can add, 2 compressors. So if I wanted to do a modern sounding compressor and a vintage, do something move this around in the chain, I can do that,
Wow.
And then the gate, there's the gate. I don't ever use the gate in here. I like the slate gate. The one he has is pretty great. So I rarely use this gate, but so that's pretty much the tools. The widener is down here on width. So if you want to, I think this is, yeah. So if you want to, make the width smaller or wider, you can do that down here. You can check, phasing, do all that good stuff, bypass the whole thing. And then another thing that I ended up using on this is I turned the limiter on. Every track has a every plugin Neutron version has a limiter as well. So I can just to make sure I'm not clipping, I just did I think I did a -1 ceiling on my limiter, and you can turn that off and on as well. So, so it's a great tool, and you don't have to use the mix assistant to get a lot out of this plugin. You can start at 0 and do your own thing, and you have a lot of tools in one box. And I mean, if you think about it, you got the sculptor thing, but then you also have the soft saturation. If you want it to sound like it's going through a board, you click that on. You got your masking tool. You can also change how you look at things. So if I want to look at a piano as a piano player, if I want to see where the frequencies are hitting on the piano, I can see that at the bottom. I can I can change all kinds of that's weird. I don't think I'd ever use that one, but I haven't even dug into the learn. That's a new feature. I don't even know what that does. I'll have to dig into that. But yeah, so this is stuff, man.
This is really cool, because it's like taking, this voodoo of like, what plugins you put on, gain staging, where it appears in a mix, phasing, all that kind of stuff, and it kind of compiles it into like a handy channel strip. Now, I'm not saying that people who have kind of seen how that works and they understand it probably would never go back 100%. But I'll tell you what I'm going to do probably pretty soon is I'm going to try to do a mix completely using this and just see, and then put it up against one of my other mixes, and hopefully it won't be too humbling,
Well, last night this song has already been mixed. I didn't mix this. I was doing all the production, and I was so ready to hand it off to somebody else. Scott Williamson, I think you talked to him a couple of weeks ago. He mixed these and for us, and it was great, because I was like, man, I'm just so tired of this. And he pulled out stuff I wouldn't have pulled out, and it was like, okay, I'm so glad we passed it off, because I just was so tired of the music that I wasn't going to have a good approach to it. But it's been like a month or so, so I came in last night, and I just used Neutron. Only other plugins I'm using are I did use this Wilder is free. Everyone needs to go get this from Infected Mushroom. It's called Wider. The thing I like about it is it doesn't collapse when you spread something out. It doesn't go away. They do some voodoo under the hood. I don't know, but I like that plugin, and it's free, so it works. And then the only other things that I used is this. I like this black box, basically my master, how I have it set up for rock, the Pultec, and then I'm going through the SSL compressor. I have an outboard one when I use a lot too. And then Ozone and all that. So those are the only plugins besides Neutron that I was using last night. And I went down here to Ozone.
Whoops, I went to grab the wider link there.
Oh, funny.
Sorry about the noise
I
there.
I went to my reference in Ozone. I use this a lot, and I put in Scott's mix, same song, and
Hmm.
I went to a section and I started mine at the same section. And then the other thing I did is I used this match EQ. So I captured his mix and I captured my mix, and I blended about 38% of the EQ together. And when I hit reference, when I play and I go back and forth between the reference, I couldn't tell the difference on which one it was. And it
Wow.
almost made me a little mad because, I rarely just use Neutron. I have all the plugins, and I'll use whatever I feel like, or I have different templates set up. And I kind of got mad going, man, this sounds really good. Sounds amazing. And it's so simple. And I don't have 1,000 plugins on a bunch of tracks. And it made me it was kind of humbling, kind of like, okay, maybe I'm overthinking, maybe I don't need, we think we need all this stuff. And, this definitely got the job done. And I was really thrilled with the results. I mean, it was really great sounding. So
Well,
it was a little humbling because it was like, okay, maybe, we need all this stuff. And really, if you know how to use the tools you have, that works great.
right. Okay, so the thing where you compared EQ curves, that was in Ozone,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah, that's an Ozone. And I love that. A lot of times for some of these publishing companies that I do a lot of mixing for, they'll tell me, I want this song to sound identical, this mix to sound identical to this other song. And you're like, okay. And so I'll use that a lot. I'll pull that in my reference. And not only can I just A/B it as I play, I could just be playing both of them. And then, when I get to the point where I kind of get lost in the which one is which, or, they sound pretty close or identical, then I know I'm at the right spot. But I'll also do this where I'll get their EQ and it'll hear my song, and it'll, you can smooth it out. Like, that's drastic. And then, but again, I would never make this move here. I don't even know. I would never do that. That just looks weird. But you know what? It sounded identical. It's fixing something in my mix. Or look, his mix, it didn't have any of that. There was some kind of high pass or low pass, looks like, on it.
Maybe that's why I
And
did.
so,
It
yeah,
cut out yours to match his.
yeah. And
Yeah.
so that's why it did it. It pulled mine down to match his. And it's just doing the little things, pushing up that 1,000K, 1,000 in there just a little bit, and up through the, I guess, 5K. And so it just does some neat things. The other thing I know we're not talking about Ozone, but this is something that they just came out with. It's really cool. It's called the low end focus. And it just lets you see it's punchy or smooth. And that's basically it. You can put up a little bit more punch. I didn't do the gain because my low end was loud enough. But if you need a little low end or you need to pull it back, you can mess with it. And then you can kind of listen and see what it's doing. And it does it. I don't know what it's doing, but it makes it sound a little punchier and a little bit, really great. So, the
Okay.
maximizer, of course, is pretty straightforward. But
Yeah. So let
yeah.
me ask: is Ozone still one of the reasons I stopped using Ozone as much? And this was an earlier version. Is it still pretty processor intensive? I mean, does it still kind of zap your computer a little bit?
My old computer, yes. I just got one of the new Macs, and so far so good. Now they did say, I don't know if this is true for Ozone 9, but I know for Neutron, another reason, one of the reasons I didn't use it on every track was because it used to be a processor hog, Neutron, but they said they've got it like 4 times more efficient now, to where
Mm.
it doesn't hog as much up. I had no problems last night with any of these things, but Ozone, yeah, I'm I don't know. At 9 so far, I haven't had any hiccups. I don't know if that's because of Ozone or because of the new computer, but
Okay.
it was one of those things though that even on my old setup, what I would end up doing is when I was mixing, my tracks, once I got my drums done, I would freeze them, and then if I needed to go back, I could always undo it.
That's a
But
good
I
idea.
I I, I just would freeze things as I went, and
Yeah.
and that way it freed up the processor. And then, but also what it did is it made me make decisions, and I had to commit to them, sort of
Hmm.
like old school when you're just doing it straight to tape or recording or whatever. And so, I had to be, I'm going to get my drums sounded good, I'm moving on, or whatever. And then if I needed to tweak something, I would undo it later. But that helped me kind of keep processing in check.
That's really cool, Kris. I'm really interested in like going to the studio today. I'm actually recording some drums today, and I'm probably going to crank this thing open and see what I can get with it. But man,
Very
hey, thanks
cool.
for your time this morning.
Sure.
This has been a blast, and this is better than I could have expected to kind of get a crash course on this thing. I know exactly where to look to go and find some stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's really
Well,
cool.
cool.
Well, Kris, man, I'll let you go for now. We've been going for like 45 minutes, and
Great.
to be honest with you, I'm a little antsy to go and get to the studio today and try this out. But hey, maybe next
Good.
time we can talk a little bit about that track spacer
Yeah.
because you said track spacer, in your opinion, even trumps this in some levels, right?
Well, for the masking issues, because it
Yeah.
basically does it. It does it for you, and it you stick it on a kick and on a bass, and you can decide which one you want to do. But basically, every time that kick hits, it's pulling out those frequencies exactly, and you just set it on I'll probably put 4% or something. I won't go crazy, but every time it kicks, it's just dipping. It's almost like automation. It kind of combines multi-compression and automation. Like you don't have to ride your faders as much because it does it. But that's a whole nother hour,
Yeah.
probably.
Okay. All right. Well, cool. Well, Kris, man, thanks for your time this morning, and
Sure.
I'm sure I'll be calling you here pretty soon to find out some more details on this thing. But
You can come over. Matt Butler and I, we have it's like AA but with plugins every week. So
can I
coach
remote
our
in on
meeting, our
that?
weekly meeting. Yeah, me and him. He's always calling me and I'm calling him, and he's like, "Hey man, you got to get this new thing." And okay, and, so it's this constant. It's probably too much,
Okay,
but
let me
hey,
ask this. I'm still on a trial version of Soothe. I'll leave you with this.
yeah,
Because Matt Butler mentioned Soothe. You mentioned Soothe. I had another couple people mention Soothe to me. So I downloaded the trial version of it and I
right.
used it a little bit and I haven't decided if I'm going to buy it yet. If you have Ozone, I mean, if you have Neutron that has this sort of stuff kind of baked in, would you say Soothe is better at some things than Ozone is? Or I'm sorry,
I
Neutron
think
is?
Soothe. I like Soothe for. I'm not sure Neutron does what Soothe does necessarily, because to me Soothe is just about that getting the harshness out. Now that one sculptor might do some of that. I haven't dug in far enough to compare the two, but to me, I like Soothe because you know I do a lot of sample orchestral stuff, and some of that stuff can be harsh, and I just stick it on those, and man, it just goes away.
Hmm.
And same with if you have a real, sometimes with some of this modern stuff I mix, the vocal is real piercing and it hurts. And man, I've just found that with just a little bit of work, that can just go away, and
Hmm.
it doesn't sound EQ'd out, if that makes sense. It just
Hmm.
sounds like the bad stuff's gone and the good stuff's still there. I think
Hmm.
that's what Sue does really well. Again, it's
Okay.
like anything. People made great records for 50, 60 years without Soothe. So it is just a tool. You don't have to have any of this stuff. If you, I heard, I'll tell this real quick. I was telling you last night, there's an engineer in town, amazing engineer, one of the top guys, and he had these drums that are amazing. I'm like, man, what did you do? We go way back. So I said, could you send that mix over? He sent it over. I opened it up, and he had Chris Lord Algae drum plug-in on every track, and that's it. And so you go, okay,
On all the drum
this is
tracks,
what,
right?
yeah. It's like, well, okay, this is one of the best guys. He knows how to do it with EQ and compress. He can do all that stuff, but he just was like, man, it sounds good. So
Um,
if you have stock plugins, you can make really great records with just that.
you
So
know,
it's just a tool.
we were talking, and this same guy, I got one
Hmm.
of his mixes and opened it up and realized that he didn't do a whole lot to the tracks, and it still sounded
No,
amazing. It's
well,
so
yeah,
much deeper, even though
yeah,
this Neutron plugin is amazing, and what you can do
yeah.
with it, it really is so much deeper than plugins. It's just
It's
skill
so
that
much
you,
more.
yeah.
Yeah, Terry Christian. Terry Christian.
I
You know
don't
of
know him
him?
personally.
Well, he's mixed. You go back and look at 80s and 90s. I've been fortunate to work with him and Michael Amardian quite a bit here the last couple of years, and he's mixed a bunch of stuff that I've done. So I got to sit in those mixes with this guy. He'll bring up stories about, hey, that time I tracked the drums for Rosanna, and you're like, okay, or he'll say that time I was working with Prince, or that time Michael Jackson at his house, we were cutting the demos for Thriller. That kind of one of those guys. And I'm looking at his mix. I come in, he had already mixed his song. He was finishing the mix. And there was like big mix, and there's like a plugin on the bass, so a couple verbs, a couple plugins on the vocal, and that was it. And I said, "Oh, so you're using a bunch of outboard gear?" He's like, "No." I said, "Well, what do you do?" He's like, "It sounds good. Why would I mess it up?" And you're like, okay. And that was such a that freed me from, there's so many mixes, man. I won't have anything on tracks. I won't, if it sounds good, I'm going to just leave it. If it's not causing problems, I don't have to put a plug-in on every track. We're getting into a whole nother conversation,
Yeah,
but it's a good one to have.
We are.
But yeah, I mean, you don't have to, all these tools are so great and you can get stuck in the weeds with them. But sometimes you don't need to have 15 things on a track.
I think if there's any one like take home from this conversation is that these are really cool plugins and they will do a lot for you, but learn from what the plugin is doing. Right. If it's not doing much to the thing, it's probably doesn't need. And if I can add one more lesson in this is that a lot of times people get frustrated with their mixing, and sometimes it's the source material that is holding people back.
That's true.
Yeah. So like Terry Christian's probably mixing, he's mixing some of the best session players, the best of the best, right? And so he doesn't, and they have dialed in their sound. They've spent 20 years figuring out which drum set sounds best on which song, and we're reaping the benefits of it, right?
Yeah, you're right.
So,
you're right.
Yeah.
Well, one other thing too, really quick, is one of the things I always do is, okay, I do the master assistant, it does its deal. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to hit bypass. And if it doesn't sound better, I'm not going to use it or I'll tweak it, just because it's saying that's what it needs. It might not be what it needs. So, so dig into the plugins, but at the same time, ears win over AI. Your ears are going to win over AI, artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
So
cool. That's a good thing to leave on, man. I appreciate your time this morning, and I'll be talking to you soon. Okay.
Yeah. Sounds good, Kevin.
Thanks, Kris. All right. That was cool. I am going to go ahead and wrap this up because I can't wait to get to the studio, cut some drums, and turn Neutron on some of my tracks. So, hey, if there's any way I can help you, let me know. There's a free resource for you at mixcoach.com. My website was down yesterday, but it's back up now. So go to mixcoach.com. There's a free resource for you there talking about, 3 tips to make your mixes come together a little quicker. Until tomorrow I'm probably going to listen to a mix or two live, and then, we'll go from there. All right. Thanks for hanging out with me this morning. It has been fun. I'll talk to you guys soon.